The timestamp read 11:51 p.m. Outside, a blizzard was swallowing Denver in layers of white silence. But inside my apartment, the only thing I felt was the sterile blue glow of my phone lighting up my face. The message from my mother, Susan, sat there like a formal judgment. Your father and I have decided. Until you pay for Chloe's engagement party, don't bother coming to the Aspen Gala. You are tearing this family apart. I barely had a second to absorb the words before another notification chimed. Instagram. Chloe had posted a photo of the event venue, glittering chandeliers and mountain views, with a caption that cut deeper than the storm outside. Finally removed the negative energy. Blessed. I studied my reflection in the dark laptop screen beside me. I waited for tears. I waited for the sharp spiral of panic I had known so well in the past. It didn't come. What came instead was something colder and far more dangerous: clarity. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I simply opened my laptop. But before I tell you what I did next, I need to ask you something. Have you ever been the one paying every bill while being treated like an unwanted guest in your own life? Tell me where you're listening from tonight. I want to know who understands this kind of silence. The apartment was cold. I kept the thermostat at 62 degrees to save money, a habit formed years ago when I was quietly covering heating costs for a 5-bedroom Aspen house I never actually lived in. I wrapped a blanket tighter around my shoulders, but my fingers stayed exposed over the keyboard. They were calm, precise, like a surgeon about to begin a careful operation. I didn't fire off an angry reply. I went somewhere far more powerful. I logged into the shared family administrative dashboard. It was the digital blueprint of their dependency. Every password and auto-pay link carefully constructed by me over the years to make their lives seamless. I started with Richard, my father. I clicked on the tab labeled Emergency Card. 3 years ago, I had opened that credit line strictly for what he called life or death emergencies. I pulled up the last 30 days of transactions: liquor stores, cigar lounges, upscale steakhouse dinners, over $1,000 in indulgence, not one hospital visit, not one pharmacy charge, just indulgence funded by my overtime hours. I didn't feel rage. I felt clinical detachment, like an accountant reconciling numbers that didn't add up. I navigated to Card Management, selected Report Lost or Stolen, then clicked Close Account Permanently. A confirmation window appeared. I clicked Yes. The digital card icon turned gray. Somewhere in Aspen, the physical card in his wallet became useless plastic. Next was Chloe. I opened the automotive lease portal. The pearl white luxury SUV she drove was legally under my name because her credit was non-existent and she had promised she would handle the payments. 14 months later, she had not made a single one. The next payment was due tomorrow. My cursor hovered over Make Payment. Then I shifted to Lease Termination. The early termination fee was steep, but dignity costs more than money. I selected Voluntary Surrender, entered my parents' driveway as the pickup location, scheduled the tow for Monday morning. "Are you sure you want to terminate this agreement?" the screen asked. "Yes," I whispered to the empty apartment before clicking Confirm. Finally, the house itself. The Aspen Gala was underway, glowing with electricity I funded, warmed by gas I subsidized, streaming on internet billed directly to my account. I logged into the utility provider. I didn't shut anything off. That would have been illegal. Instead, I made something far more sustainable. I removed my primary checking account, deleted my backup card, switched off paperless billing, and changed notifications to mail only. Then I adjusted the payment method to cash upon delivery. The next bill wouldn't quietly drain from my bank account. It would arrive physically in their mailbox, stamped in red, demanding attention. I leaned back in my chair. The only light left was the slow blink of my laptop's sleep indicator, pulsing like a heartbeat in the dark. My apartment usually felt lonely at night. Tonight, the silence felt like leverage. In under 12 minutes, I had severed 3 major arteries of their lifestyle. The wind outside roared against the windows. For once, I didn't feel small against it. I felt aligned with it. I wasn't afraid of the storm anymore. I was the storm. People always ask how someone lets it reach this point. They see the total, $82,000 over 10 years, and assume stupidity or weakness. They don't understand how normalized cruelty works. You don't wake up and volunteer to finance people who resent you. It happens gradually. The boiling frog metaphor isn't dramatic, it's accurate. My bank account was the pot. I thought back to the first moment the temperature rose. 5 years ago, Richard needed emergency back surgery. He had refused insurance for years, calling it a scam. The bill was $25,000. I was 24, driving a Honda Civic with duct tape on the bumper, living on ramen to build my savings. They didn't ask directly. They didn't have to. My mother cried softly at the kitchen table, looking at me with that expectation heavy in her eyes. Richard groaned theatrically from his recliner, wondering aloud if paralysis would be his fate because some people valued money over family. I wired the full amount. My entire savings disappeared in one transfer. I thought I was buying gratitude. I was purchasing a role. There was no thank you, only the understanding that I would do it again. And I did. Then came Chloe's entrepreneurial dream. 2 years ago, she needed $30,000 for a lifestyle brand. She pitched it over dinner I paid for, talking about branding and disruption. I knew the numbers were fantasy. I knew she had never sustained discipline in her life, but Richard and Susan cornered me, accused me of jealousy, called me bitter, said I didn't support her vision because I was trapped in corporate thinking. Eventually, writing the check was easier than enduring the accusations. The business evaporated in 6 months, no launch, no transparency. That is how the trap functions. You convince yourself that one more sacrifice will finally fill the emptiness inside them, but you are not filling a void, you are digging downward. Sitting there in the cold dark of my apartment, I recognized the pattern. I had been conditioned since childhood to believe my worth was transactional. Chloe was adored for her beauty. Richard commanded authority as the patriarch. I existed as utility. I was their contingency plan, their financial airbag. But even the most conditioned frog reacts when the water becomes steam. Tonight's text wasn't just cruel, it was the final degree of heat. The frog wasn't boiling anymore. The frog had overturned the pot. Morning arrived over Denver, turning gray snow into blinding white slush. The blizzard outside calmed, but the digital storm inside my phone intensified. Notifications piled up across the lock screen. 35 missed calls, 62 texts. The first voicemail was Chloe's. I pressed play. In the background, I heard the delicate chime of a high-end bridal boutique. Her voice was sharp with hysteria. "You humiliated me. The card declined. In front of everyone. Fix it now." There was no curiosity, no concern, only outrage that the supply had been cut. Susan's voice messages followed, breathless, dramatic. "Emma, you are killing him. Your father's chest is tight. If something happens, it's your fault. Send the gala money back immediately. We have guests. Don't be heartless." Then a text from Richard, a photo of his blood pressure monitor reading 180 over 110. Beneath it, a single sentence, "Look at what you are doing to this family." I sat at my kitchen table with black coffee, watching the screen light up repeatedly. I searched for certain words. "Are you okay? What's wrong? Let's talk." They never appeared. To them, I was infrastructure. When an appliance fails, you don't ask about its feelings. You shake it, kick it, demand it resume service. For the first time in 29 years, I didn't feel compelled to fix anything. No familiar twist of guilt, no automatic apology forming. just quiet distance. I realized how much mental energy I had spent preheating their world, anticipating moods, smoothing crises before they formed. I took another sip of my own coffee, bitter and strong. I decided I would no longer brew theirs. I didn't block their numbers. That would have been emotional. Instead, I muted notifications and opened a new browser tab. I approached the situation the way I would a failing division in a company. When a department hemorrhages resources without accountability, you audit it. I put on my coat and walked 3 blocks to the office supply store, past greeting cards, past gift wrap, straight to organization. I bought a heavy-duty 3-inch binder, red, the color of warning. I added reinforced dividers and highlighters. Back at my desk, I began printing. The printer ran non-stop for 45 minutes, 10 years of statements, credit card logs, wire transfers, Venmo histories. The pages stacked up, warm and dense. I punched holes in each sheet, organizing meticulously by year and recipient. 2018, the back surgery. 2020, the business loan. 2022, the mortgage rescue. I slotted them into the binder, the metal rings snapping shut with a sound like a jail cell locking. On the spine, I wrote 2 words in black permanent marker: Project Independence. It was a physical manifestation of my invisible labor. When it was just numbers on a screen, it felt abstract, but sitting there on my desk, 3 inches thick and weighing 4 pounds, it was undeniable. It was a monument to my own exploitation. Then I made a phone call. I called Sarah, a forensic accountant I used to work with at a previous firm. We skipped the small talk. "I need a favor," I said. "I need you to trace a specific wire transfer from 2 years ago, $30,000. It was supposed to go to a medical collections agency for a hospital in Denver." I gave her the routing number and the date. Sarah didn't ask why I was auditing my own father. She just typed. "Give me 24 hours, she said. Finally, I opened a word processor and drafted a formal document. It wasn't a letter to a sister. It was a notice of voluntary surrender regarding the SUV. I cited the lease agreement terms, the lack of payment, and the scheduled repossession date. I attached a copy of the tow truck order. I didn't sign it. Love, Emma. I signed it. Emma Miller Lee. I printed 3 copies, 1 for me, 1 for the glove box, and 1 for the red binder. I ran my hand over the plastic cover of the binder. For years they had told me I was crazy. They told me I was cheap. They told me I was imagining things. But facts don't imagine. Math doesn't gaslight. This binder was my shield, and tomorrow night at the gala, it was going to be my sword. 24 hours later, my phone rang. It was Sarah. I picked up on the first ring, my pen hovering over a fresh legal pad. "Tell me," I said. There was a pause on the other end, the kind of heavy, static-filled silence that usually precedes a death notification. "Emma," Sarah said, her voice stripped of its usual professional detachment. "You're sitting down, right?" "I'm standing. Just tell me." "Okay. The wire transfer for $30,000, the routing number didn't go to a medical collections agency. It went to a holding account for a title company in downtown Denver." The room seemed to tilt slightly to the left. A title company? For what? "I pulled the public property records that matched the transaction date," Shara continued. 2 days after you wired the money to your father, a down payment of exactly $30,000 was recorded for a unit at the Glassworks. It's a luxury condo building in the London district. She took a breath. "The deed isn't in your father's name, Emma. It's in Chloe's." I didn't drop the phone. I didn't scream. I felt a wave of nausea roll through my stomach, hot and acidic, but I swallowed it down. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city. 2 years ago, Richard had called me weeping. He said the surgeons were threatening to send his debt to collectors. He said they would garnish his pension. He said he was terrified. I had drained my emergency fund. I had canceled my vacation. I had driven a car with no heat for a winter so I could save him.
and he hadn't used a cent of it for his back. He had taken my sacrifice and used it to buy my sister a view of the mountains. "Are you sure?" I asked, though I already knew she was. "I'm looking at the digital copy of the deed right now," Sarah said. "Richard is listed as the guarantor, but Chloe is the primary owner. The down payment matches your transfer to the penny." "Send it to me," I said. "Send me everything." The email arrived 10 seconds later. I opened the attachment. There it was, the official county record. Owner, Chloe Miller. Property value, $600,000. I stared at her signature on the bottom line, a loopy, childish scrawl that I had paid $30,000 to authorize. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. It wasn't just toxic family dynamics. This was fraud. This was theft. He had looked me in the eye, played on my fear of his death, and robbed me to fund her lifestyle. I printed the deed. The paper was still warm from the printer as I punched 3 holes in the side. I opened the red binder to the section labeled 2020. I placed the deed directly on top of the wire transfer receipt. The evidence was complete. The nausea faded, replaced by a cold, hard resolve that felt like iron settling in my spine. They thought I was just a bitter daughter who had cut off the allowance. They had no idea I was the prosecutor who had just found the smoking gun. I didn't drive to Aspen.
I didn't put on a gown, and I didn't storm the ballroom to make a scene. That would have given them exactly what they wanted, a reaction, a villain they could point to and call hysterical. Instead, I sat on my couch with a glass of cheap wine and opened my laptop. Chloe was live streaming. The feed was high def, broadcasting to her 12,000 followers. The ballroom was bathed in gold light. There was a jazz band playing in the corner. Richard was holding court near the bar, wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my first car. Susan was laughing, clutching a glass of champagne, playing the role of the benevolent matriarch. Chloe was in the center of the frame, twirling in a white dress, telling her audience how blessed she felt to be surrounded by generosity and love. It was a perfect performance. But that is the thing about power built on someone else's money. It is an illusion. It is a house of cards standing in a wind tunnel, waiting for someone to open the door. And at 8:15 p.m., the door opened. A man walked into the frame. He wasn't a guest, he was a courier from a private process service, dressed in a sharp, dark uniform. He didn't look at the cameras. He walked straight through the crowd, parting the sea of black-tie guests like a shark moving through a school of fish. He stopped in front of Richard. The jazz band faltered. Chloe stopped twirling. The comment section on the live stream started asking, "Who is that?" The courier handed Richard a heavy package. It wasn't wrapped in a bow, it was the red binder. Then he handed Chloe a tablet. I picked up my phone. I sent a single message to the family group chat. "Check the tablet, page 4, the condo down payment." On my screen, I watched the notification pop up on Chloe's phone, which she was using to live stream. She frowned, confused. She looked down at the tablet the courier had given her. At the same time, Richard opened the red binder. I saw the color drain from his face in real time. It wasn't a gradual realization, it was an instant collapse. He saw the bank statements, he saw the liquor store tracking, he saw the forensic audit of the $30,000 he stole. Susan tried to grab the binder, her smile twisting into panic, but it was Chloe's reaction that satisfied me most. She stared at the deed on the tablet, the proof that her lifestyle was funded by fraud committed against her own sister. She looked up at the camera, realizing the stream was still running, realizing that the guests around her were whispering, realizing that the medical debt lie was dead. This is the fragility of false status. When you build your identity on resources you do not own, you are always one audit away from bankruptcy. They looked powerful 5 minutes ago, but without my silence holding them up, they were just thieves in rented tuxedos. Chloe lunged for the phone. The live stream cut to black. The show was over.
But in my apartment, the silence wasn't lonely anymore. It was the sound of a gavel coming down. The fallout wasn't loud. It was a series of quiet administrative corrections. Richard tried to call me the next morning, but he reached a disconnected line message. I had changed my number at 9 a.m. The luxury SUV was loaded onto a flatbed tow truck. 3 days later, I received the confirmation email from the leasing agency while I was eating lunch. The condo in London was listed for sale by the end of the week. They had to liquidate the asset to pay back the loan I had exposed, or face a fraud investigation. I sat in my apartment. My bank account was lighter by $82,000. That money was gone, burned on the altar of their entitlement. I would never get it back. But as I looked around my quiet, cold living room, I realized I had purchased something far more valuable than a condo or a gala ticket. I had bought my own life back. I opened my laptop one last time. I didn't log in to their accounts. I logged in to a travel site. I booked a cabin in the mountains for next weekend. Not in Aspen, somewhere quiet, somewhere with no signal. Just me, the snow, and the silence I had finally earned. To everyone watching this, I want to speak to you directly. To the invisible children, to the fixers, to the ones who think that if you just pay one more bill or solve one more crisis or swallow one more insult, they will finally love you. They won't. Love is not a subscription service. You cannot buy your way into a family that is committed to misunderstanding you. The most expensive thing you will ever pay for is a relationship that costs you your dignity. I spent a decade trying to be their safety net, and they used it to strangle me. Don't wait for the thank you. It isn't coming. Close the account, change the locks, let the calls go to voicemail. You are not a wallet. You are a person, and you have the right to be free. If this story spoke to you, if you are the one holding the weight of your family's expectations, please share this video. Let's remind every silent ATM out there that they have the right to close the account. You are not alone.